Are you a weeper? Do people think you're very dramatic in your expression? Maybe sometimes you can kind of be self-absorbed emotionally. If some of those things do apply to you, you might be 1E. First, emotion, let's go. So basics, result-oriented placement. And this can give them almost a selfish, self-absorbed vibe. They're not really focused on interacting with the emotionality with others, on dwelling on their own emotions even. They're not interested in analyzing them, dwelling on them, picking them apart, or engaging, giving them to others. They're not interested in that, because remember, the first placement is often selfish placement, which is what makes 1V people who can be tyrants in the way, imposing their will on others. 1F people being very greedy. Those things all apply. And with 1E, it's this emotional, almost selfishness that can be observed.
I'm exhausted.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. You're all going to be fine.
Obviously, not to say that just because you're 1E, you're going to be selfish emotionally. No, but this is simply a tendency for you not to want to go around processing emotions of others, kind of like a therapist. That's not going to be 1E. Their emotions are their life, because remember, that's their dominant way of going about life. They make decisions based on emotion. They trust their gut instincts, their intuition, their view of the world around them. And they often want to add beauty to it. That's the thing with 1E. This is kind of something that people forget when it comes to emotion in psychosophy. It has to do a lot with mysticism, beauty, love for life, expression, with kind of being theatrical, with poetry, with creativity. That is what emotion is responsible with in psychosophy. They trust their feelings and they believe a life where you cannot live 100%, actually no, 200, 300% of full intensity of your emotions is not life worth living. And it's funny because I've had those conversations with 1E individuals, because I do have few of them in my life. And I always ask, would you change that about you? Would you change the fact that you are so incredibly emotionally driven individual? Now, from my perspective as a person who is 4E, to me emotions are irrelevant. I don't think about them. They don't matter. In fact, they're so relevant, I forget that I have them in my stack in Psychosophy, in my placement. But they always said I would never change my emotional state, because that I am who I am because of that emotional state. I would not be myself if I would not have those strong emotions. And yes, sometimes it's grief. Immense pain or overreaction, fear, but sometimes it's joy. It's incredibly intense feelings of love, right? So that's the thing with 1E. They don't want to abandon those emotions. Those emotions is what makes life worth living. Be it sorrow, be it pain, it does not matter. Their emotional state exists oftentimes regardless of external stimuli, either event or people, it doesn't matter. For myself, usually the emotional expression is there when I am engaging with others, which makes sense if you're 4E. With 1E, it's complete opposite. They will feel things because they feel things. Maybe they woke up and they have sudden surge of emotionality today. Maybe they're in that mood. And it doesn't have to be caused by you or someone else. They feel what they feel, regardless of you or anyone else. Obviously, not to say that all they do is go around feeling everything, no, but to them, emotions are number one. They tend to miss out cues, maybe emotions of others, and they might even neglect it when they're more unhealthy. So, an unhealthy 1E individual is so busy feeling and expressing themselves that they are completely almost oblivious to how you feel. The funny thing is, if 1E people are probably listening to this, they might even be like, oh, but I care. So it's not really the lack of care for them, but it's simply out of, in my opinion, more so ignorance, tunnel vision. So they kind of might neglect the other individual's emotions and not kind of dwell in it, which is different one to E. To E would be engaging, would engage with the person. Oh, how do you feel? Let's talk about you. Let's understand a completely different experience. An amazing placement when it comes to self-expression, which makes sense. But very theatrical, very expressive, facial expressions, very strong gestures, gesticulations. But there's also this element of beauty, expression in art, poetry, movies, music, creating things that have strong emotional undertones. Often when you people, you'll see that even with different placements of physics, they dress very unexpectedly, very unusually. very weirdly eccentric, bright, explosive look. Stand out. Very bright always. Because again, it's expressing themselves. And now don't mistake it for an elegant, classy look necessarily, because it might not be. They might look genuinely weird. Now, some of you might say you say that they're extremely emotional, extremely expressive people. What if I might? There's situations where I hold back my emotions. I don't want others to see or know how I feel. Am I still 1E? And the answer is yes, you're still 1E, because 1E, you still can outwardly not show those emotions, but you live with emotions. Just because you might not show them everywhere, that does not mean you're not 1E. Extremely moody people. That's something you need to learn with 1E individuals. They will have different moods. Extremely moody, and sometimes you might ask yourself, what the fuck's going on? This ain't making any sense. But you go with it. You flow with it. I'm 4E. I've got flow with it. It's like a storm. I flow with the storm. I don't care. Like it ain't gonna move me. But some people can't cope with that because it's a lot. They're extremely intense.